I will be showing how to do a galaxy pet today on Sci. So first I suggest you start with a darker base. Dark blue is typically what I start with. The next couple layers will be, I usually airbrush with a lighter color or colors that I'm going to use for a galaxy. For me, I like blues and purples, so this will be a blue and purple pet. So just take whatever color, pick the airbrush, and then go around random places of the pet or places that you would like to see more of the galaxy type. You can play with the settings over here to see if you like any of those. But usually I just coat the first colors in the airbrush to start with the galaxy first. You can blur it too if you feel like that helps. And even a layer in overlay can help make the difference too, because it'll just make it a little brighter. Next, you're going to go to the brush setting. Now this depends on how you want your galaxy to look, because you're about to dot the crap out of this. Usually you can start with bigger dots and then move your way down to smaller dots. I'll start with a 5, and then I'll pick one of the colors I'm using, so blues and purples, and I'll do another blue, and then I'm just going to put a bunch of dots all over the place. But save room, because you're going to be adding more dots of other colors in other places in a few minutes. Once you've got those dots, turn down the transparency stuff a little bit, because you want the bigger dots you want faded. And then pick another color and go with a slightly smaller brush. This is now on 4 and it's purple. And add dots to where you didn't add dots before, or at least in places where you didn't add dots before. Make them dimmer. Go a size smaller. Now this is fun too. You can hit the overlay. I usually go all the way to the white and add even more dots. And you can add these more clustered and tighter than the other ones. Of course, dim these ones a little too. You can go back to picking more colors, but the point is you're getting to smaller and smaller dots as you go along and sticking them throughout the pets. And continue to lighten. Once you get to a point where you feel like you've got a good number of dots in different colors, you can go to like a 2, depending on how big your canvas is. This one's a 400, so it's good to go to 2. And you can go to your luminosity settings and then dot it lightly, because these ones will stick out more. You can dim these ones a little if you want, and then do another layer of those ones, or you can go slightly bigger if you realize that's not exactly how you wanted it. You can leave it at full, but I'll still dim mine a little. You can go back and look and see if you want to add more of the little airbrush setting type things to make it a little lighter. It still works well with other colors other than blue and purple. If you wanted to add your reds or your pinks. Even orange. And you can just have a very sparkly, colorful pastel galaxy if you wanted. And if you want to give it a more of a darker look around the edges, of course you can run another layer with multiply in your airbrush and darken around the toes or the shoulders, or just the outer lines if you really wanted to. You can lighten it if you'd like to, or leave it darker. You can blur it a little. You can add more dots if you felt like it. I'm going to add the tail real quick. And make it dark blue. If you want more of like a swirling type little galaxy looking on your pet, then it's fun to play with the airbrush. I like sometimes the crust texture on the airbrush. You need to pick a point where you feel like that would be the center of your cosmos type thing and set it on the pet. Blur it just a little bit. You can go in front of it or behind it, but then pick the color you want. Grab the airbrush. You'll probably want a little bit of smaller of an airbrush, but go around. Dim it, because that's kind of where you're going to go with these. Just going to follow one of your swirls. Blur it just a little bit. You can mix other colors in with it. and play with your overlay and luminosity settings. If you want the middle center part to stick out a little more, you could always lightly change its color. And then go to the luminosity and add a very small dot to the center and blur it slightly. You're going to dot these again. There's a lot of dotting in this every time you do this. And because if you made a smaller one, you're going to want smaller dots. So maybe stay, depending on how big the canvas is, between like a 2 and a 4 or less. This is small, so I'm going to start on a 2.6. You can add the dots in whatever color. Or overlay it. Add a luminosity pair of dots in a smaller size, following along whatever little cosmos cloud you made. Depending on how blurred you want it, you can continue to blur it until you feel like it's where you want it. And you'll still want to add other colors and bigger dots to show your spaceness around your pet. I use a lot of airbrush when I do these pets. You can always airbrush in random spots like that. That was going to be like your space cloud or whatever. And just blur it. You can lighten it if you want. Do what you want. It's your pet. And the little swirling cosmos can be played with as much as you feel like you're going to play with it to get it where you want it to be. Always think about where your dots are, what layers you want them on top or under of, and then start your dot process all over again in bigger dots. If you choose to continue to have more than just this little swirly space part, and go back from doing bigger dots and going down to littler dots. And of course, dim them and repeat. You're probably not going to want dots as small as you use for your little galaxy, just so you can differentiate a little better. And you can keep going until you figure out that's what you want. That's what you're looking for. I like to mix a lot of little overlay layers in between. And sometimes I like to darken around the edges a little bit. So I'll go to the layer right before you get to your shading and whatever else. And do what we did earlier and just go lightly around the edges with a multiply layer. And don't forget to blur it. And lighten it to whatever you feel like works for you. Always check your shading layers and see if they're on or off. And your highlights. You can change, of course, the colors of your highlights in your shading layers, because sometimes that makes all the difference. Of course, don't forget to shade your line or color your lines, and you can change your shading. But that is pretty much the basics. You'd repeat it anywhere else you'd want. And that's it.